Hello and welcome to my latest video. So this time we're going to be taking a look through the second batch of 100 vintage Pelican books. So that's Pelican's A101 up to A200. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. So the first book we've got is A101, which is Men of America, Lionel Elvin. Now, these particular books were published during the Second World War, the bulk of the ones that we're going to be looking at today, and so consequently they're amongst the very scarcest and most fragile. So literally bits of these fall off literally as you're going through them, because they're on very, very fragile paper. So this one here, published in 1941. A lot of them will have like adverts on, so cigarettes or Cadbury's chocolate there. They'll have whatever adverts were going at that time. But be aware that some of my copies are not particularly that great. However, I am only missing one book from this run of 100 titles, and I'll pop a picture of that one in. So we've got the whole lot. You've had a look at the whole lot basically. So 102, Human Psychology, Kenneth Walker. It's a very thin little tome. It was amazing to think that they could even contemplate putting a plate in to some of these books, considering the time that they were published and the wartime constraints that they were under. 103, Adventures of Ideas, Alfred North Whitehead. It's one of my favourite adverts there on the back. I've sewn all these buttons on, Mummy. Can I have my little bag of Maltesers? And then Mars bars in the back there. Mars bars are merit bars. So this is during Dig for Victory, of course. So if the child had done his chores in the garden, he was rewarded with a little Mars bar. Incredible, eh? Now this was a double volume. So this is 104 and 105, and it's a famous American men of science. And they decided to release these in, rather than as one really big thick book, they released them separately. And Penguin would do that later on, different adverts on the back, but would have been released at the same time, published at the same time. Britain BC, this is a scarce one. As you can see, my cover is literally detached. It is that scarce. The thing is, they don't go for a lot, Pelican books, so it's just a matter of I just need to get lucky, and I'll February 43, this one, I'll get lucky, and then I'll be able to get a better copy of this, will just come my way. But for the time being, I'm just going to be happy to have it as a filler. 107 then, Music in England, Eric Blom. And they will vary a little bit in condition, but on the whole, these books are quite tough, and they are rare, but they're not mega collected. It's not like a crime book from this period, which would be potentially, a couple of £100. The Pelicans just don't have that same appeal, although there are collectors of them. So the bulk of my Penguin collection came from one chap who was really into like non-fiction books, and he collected like the Observer books and things like that, and he had very few regular series Penguins. They were almost all Pelicans. This is fairly robust, this one, 109, so it makes me think it must have got published a little bit later. Yeah, so in actual fact this copy of 109 is a reprint, because it says the first edition was published in March 45. This one here is revised and enlarged 1945. So I want the 1943 edition. So when I go to edit my videos, I shall pop 109 in first edition on my wants list. 1110, but you could instantly tell just by the feel of the book, even though it looked the same, you could see it was from a later period. The actual paper here is often recycled. This is interesting. So this says it was first published in the Scientific Book Club in 1940, and then by Penguin in 1943. This is another fragile one in the collection, Soviet Science. This one's got a detached back cover, but it is complete apart from that, just. hanging in there by the skin of its teeth. 1942, this one. Soviet Science. This is The Growth of Science. A.P. Rossiter. And you can see how it would be quite tricky to get a collection of these together, particularly in first edition, because a lot of the titles are not exactly jumping off the shelf at you, and they may not have even been saved, and the actual information may have been superseded, but not always. And the history ones are particularly fascinating, as are, I think, the natural history ones. So this one, the biological control of insects. This is a pretty nice copy as well, number 113. Fairly robust, which is what we want. That's cool. Then we got 114, A Short History of French Literature. Lovely. Then we've got 115, Prehistoric Britain. This is one that I only got fairly recently. I think I may have got it from a Penguin book dealer. Quite nice to see. 143. And it's funny, but when you come across runs of Pelican books in dealers' catalogues, they list them all pretty much across the board at like £1.50, £2 a pop, and that's the time to try and fill in the blanks if possible. Now, one of the bigger Penguin dealers did release a catalogue recently. He only does about 1 or 2 a year at most, and there were a few Pelican books in there. Interestingly, the ones that I'm still missing, pre-number, say, 400-500, none of them were in there. So maybe they are just shorter print runs, something like that. As I said, I'm only missing a handful, but even so, interesting that they weren't there. 117 then, Growing Up in New Guinea. And they very much do vary, don't they, condition-wise. Wow. 118, Narrative Poems of the Late 19th Century. Wowee. And this one feels slightly different. Almost certainly that would have been printed at a different publisher to some of the other ones, and they didn't quite have it spot on. And this happened during the war quite a bit. This is a very thin little volume here, Beyond the Microscope, a possible candidate for thinnest Penguin ever. Although I think that honour goes to the first Penguin handyman, I believe. Next one we got is The Ancient World, T.R. Glover. This is number 120. Quite a nice copy of that one. Fragile one again. Mathematician's Delight. 121. It's a fairly famous one, this. It was interesting, when I was going through the first 100, I wasn't sure quite how much interest there would be in these, and I was basically taken to tack and said, of course there's loads of interest. And that first video, if you've not seen it, it's had, I don't know, 600, almost 700 viewings now, so I guess the interest was there. Now this is A122. Now this was first published as a Penguin special, and it was an early one, special number 5, and that was quite a way back. That was in July 1938, so I'm expecting to so look, first published in July 38, and that would have been as a Penguin special original. Then it was reprinted a few times, and then this new revised edition in January 1945. So there we are, as a Pelican. One, two, three, Minerals in Industry. A fairly foxed copy of that one. And interestingly, no adverts except penguin house ads. Quite interesting in that. And then 125 to round out the first quarter is a look at the weather. Recognise the name Raymond Bush. He went on to do quite a few penguin handbooks, early ones. This is a little look at the weather. So that's the first quarter. So 126 then, metals in the service of man. Bit of a different sort of style cover, that one, isn't it? Once again, it's got the darker blue, which makes me think almost certainly it wasn't printed in the regular printers. It was one of the maybe the part-time printers. But very, very good when you consider when this was published, with the photo insert as well. I mean, wowee. Penguin living up to their reputation as popular educators. 126, this one is film. Lots and lots of photos in this one. And that one almost looks like it should have been a Pelican special, but it wasn't. Coming of age in Samoa. Margaret Mead. Tiny bit of the cover bent over there. Will it just flake off? These are so fragile, some of these books. I guess they could really use being bagged up just to keep them in nice shape and stop them deteriorating anymore. 128. None of them have ever been cleaned, so I will get round to sort of going through and cleaning them properly at some point. 129, maybe when I've filled in the last couple that I need. Democratic Ideals and Reality. There's a big one here. 130, Interglossa. A draft of an auxiliary for a democratic world order. Yeah, that was a big one for its time, when it was published. 1943 again. We're almost at the height of the Blitz at this point. 131, English Diaries of the 19th century. Sequel to number 1. This is the second common reader, Virginia Woolf, 132. This one's probably worth tracking down if you are a Virginia Woolf fan. Another thin one here, 133. ABC of Psychology. A Schweppes ad on the back there. That's quite nice, isn't it? Don't see that one very often. Britain under the Romans, 134. Nice history title, that. I bet that's interesting. Don't mind a bit of amateur archaeology, as it were, a bit of amateur history. Very pleased to see the Time team is back after many years' absence, and that's here on YouTube, so do check the Time team out with new episodes. 135 then, Civilization, Science and Religion. Another thin one coming up here, wowee. 136, an autobiography, R.G. Collingwood. Very, very thin little one there. A few nice house ads there on the back for King Penguins, and then the biography titles within the main series. On 137, a survey of Russian music. On 138, the American character. Margaret Mead. 1439. The physical basis of personality. Lotus shoes on the back there. Just what we wanted. And they start to get a little bit more robust as we go on. So we got number 140 now. Managerial Revolution. This feels a little bit more robust. Published in Penguin, April 1945. So we've come along a bit. But this is still consecutive numbering. 141. Why smash atoms? But basically, the books that we've just looked at were perhaps the very scarcest of all the Pelicans, and you can see, looking at them there, just how thin the spines are. Very, very, very fragile paper, and you can understand why potentially these just haven't survived as well as we might like, you know. 142, Greek science, its meaning for us. 143, Life in Shakespeare's England. A bit more of a bigger book this, bigger tome. A few little plates inside. 144, Introduction to the Bible. Yep, still 1945 these. 145, Philosophy and the Physicists. Persons and Periods. 146. (147) Animal Camouflage. That's got a very robust cover on this one. Very much thicker than we've been experiencing. 1946. So we're coming outside of the war now, and things are getting a bit better. 148, Psychology and World Order. 149, Grow Up and Live. This one's obviously published later. Yeah, 1949. So this, chronologically, numerically, this is the right one. However, it didn't come out till 1949, so numerically it's in the correct spot, but it just didn't. It was printed a bit later. And then 150 here. This was opera. This is another one which was originally a Penguin special. Yeah, so published as a Penguin special in May 1940. I think off the top of my head it was number 22, and then reprinted in September 1940 and March 1942, then published as a Pelican book in 1945. And it was actually, I just had a quick look, it was special number 40. So 151 then, Reading for Profit. Montgomery, Belgium. 152, Education in England. And the wartime ads are most definitely gone now. 153, a bit of a classic, Common Wildflowers. Illustrated, look at this on almost every page. Photographs as well. This is a real high quality Pelican, this one. Now 154, I've not. That's the only one I'm missing out of this 100, which is Microbes by the Million, Hugh Nickel. 155, Plato and his Dialogues. 156, British Music of Our Time. A.L. Bacharach. I'm sure it's nothing to do with Burt Bacharach, but you never know. Someone could look that up for me. 157, The Science of Seeing. Now, as we go on now, you'll find that the books actually are they're much more robust now, and they're in much better condition on the whole. 158, Juvenile Delinquency and the Law. So I don't have to be quite as delicate going through them. 159, Land of the Soviets. Climbing in Britain. Number 160, A160. (161) Fish Lore. I think we'll slip that little pile up there. (162) Local Government. This one was from a different printer as well. Once again, you can tell by the feel of the cover, it's a different paper. Yeah, Eric Bemrose Limited in Liverpool. It wasn't like one of their regular publishers, like printers like Hazel Watson Vinnie, for example, and that's why it's just not quite there. Maybe they just they were just backed up, and they farmed that one out to a secondary printers. English Letters of the 18th Century. 163. And 164. I believe these got re-released later as a single volume. (165) Personality of Man. (166) Glass. Heavily illustrated, that one. (167) William Temple and His Message. Another religious title. (168) This is one of my all-time favourite Pelicans, Pyramids of Egypt. Really, really interesting book. Always been interested in, as an amateur, in a little bit of Egyptology, and this was a really, really good one to dip in and out of. 1947 we're on to now. 169, a big head, and this is actually published as a double volume. You see, it says double volume on the side, and it's got the two pelicans on the logo. So this is about 370 pages in total. So it warranted the double volume treatment, and it was 2 shillings, whereas the regular books are 1 shilling and 6pence, or there or thereabouts. 170 then. This was a shilling on its own. Science and the Nation. (171) The Bleak Age. 172, A Short History of English Drama, B.I. for Evans. Now this one, I think, is also one that came out a little bit later than the main run. 1948, only a year out, but it was a number that got missed, and then they went back and filled it in. 173, A173, The World's Wealth. .174, Population of Britain. And there's a different version of the double volume there, with a pelican either side of it. And 175 is Bird Recognition, Volume 1. These are quite sought after. This one's got an over sticker of 2 and 6, so it'll be interesting to see. Oh, that's interesting. Look at that. It's got a ruler on the side there in inches, so you could measure whatever you found, feathers or whatever. Eggs, who knows. 1947. It's the first printing, but yeah, it's got a 2 and 6 over sticker, and that probably would have been 1 and 6 or even a shilling. But very, very nice book. Look at that, with the pictures and when it's likely to be seen and what parts of the British Isles to find it. So how about that, eh? So that was 175. So that's 3/4 of the way through now. So the last little batch now, and this is 176, Bird Recognition 2, and it does say it's the first printing from 1951, even though it doesn't really look like Bird Recognition number 1. And here's the third volume, Bird Recognition 3. And let's check the printing history of this one. First published 1955, so maybe the numbers were kept back so that the 3 volumes eventually would become the set, you know. They would be consecutive on the Penguin list. But they actually came out 2 years apart, each volume, until they were done by the same author. That's very interesting, that. Penguin reserving the number, basically. 178, The Inventor and His World. .179, Genetics. .180, More Common Wildflowers. And these are the books that I think really make the Pelican list interesting. It's books like this. You know, interesting today, I should say. But at the time, something like that was really fantastic. 181, Man, the Unknown. You can tell a few of these have never ever been read since they were published. 182 is Russian Art. This is also just double volume on the spine there. It's got the 2 pelicans on the front. British Herbs is 183, A183. So, advert at the back, we haven't seen one of them for a while. Heath and Heather Limited, herb specialists. I guess they were keen to get an advert in this particular one. I bet it wasn't a difficult sell for Penguin. Still 1949, so we're still in the 40s here. Little 25 pence inside. I said none of these have been cleaned and gone through my process, so some of them are very, very dark along the top edges there. Bearing in mind some of these, you know, I mean, they're 75 years old, most of the books we're looking at today. A184, The Irish. Look at the Irish peoples. There. Another double volume, 185, Geology and Scenery in England and Wales. Try and make sure these are in shot. Scientist in Russia, 186. And how interesting that we've had so many on Russia and the Soviets in this particular 100. 187, Animals Without Backbones, Volume 1. And this is actually in a dust wrapper, which they did do on the odd double volume, which this one is. And that was Animals Without Backbones, Volume 1. And then the same treatment was given to Animals Without Backbones, Volume 2, also in a dust wrapper there. (189) Life of Jesus. (190) Early Victorian novelists, and they'll do a lot more of this later on, and they do study these. The first one there in that spotted was on Dickens. 191, Africa Emergent. Now it says this is a revised and expanded edition. So what's the printing history of this one? First published in 1938, revised and expanded edition published in Pelican 1949. So it's still the Pelican first. Big thick old double volume there. 192, Greek Science. We had Greek Science 1 earlier on. I think it was number 140 or something like that. Yeah, there it is, 142, Greek Science. And that would later get republished in one volume as number A140. 193 is Size of the Universe, F.G.A. Hargreaves. Psychology of Sex, 194. Music Ho, 195. That one feels like it's never been read. 196, The Romans, specially written for Pelican Books rather. 197, England in the 19th century, Waterloo to the First World War. I believe this one does get re-released or republished as part of the Pelican History of England, which becomes really, really comprehensive and a great series. 198, Before Philosophy. Bit of damage to one of the pages there. Just increase that one while we're at it. 199, Archaeology of Palestine. This is also published as a double volume. And then number 200, and the last one we'll look at today, Aztecs of Mexico. Also a double volume, 2 shillings and 6pence. Big photo insert here. Really interesting drawings. And there is that. It reminds me of the classic King Penguin book, Magic Books from Mexico, which was full of those drawings. Excellent stuff. Very interesting indeed. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed looking through those 100 or so vintage Pelican books. I know they're not to everyone's taste, but I still think they're quite fascinating, and a little glimpse of popular non-fiction from 75 years ago. If you have enjoyed today's video, do please give it the thumbs up. Do please consider subscribing for regular vintage paperback content, and I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.